The desert wind carried whispers of forgotten names, as though the sands themselves were protectors of a truth buried beneath 2 millennia of silence. In a dimly lit monastery library, hidden behind false walls and worm-eaten scrolls, a single manuscript once lay, its pages fragile, its words forbidden. This was no ordinary gospel. It was a text said to contain the voice of the woman closest to the Christ, a voice the Church tried to erase from history: Mary Magdalene. Imagine a candle flickering in a room filled with dust, where an ancient hand dares to open a book that had been concealed for centuries. What it reveals is not a story of sin and repentance, but of wisdom, leadership, and a secret vision of the soul's journey. A gospel that challenges the very foundations of authority, questioning who has the right to speak for God, and whether salvation lies within the human heart itself rather than in the walls of an institution. Those who encountered this text spoke of teachings so radical, so empowering, that the guardians of orthodoxy condemned it as heresy. For 2,000 years, the words of Mary Magdalene were silenced, censored, and buried beneath the weight of official doctrine. And yet, like a seed hidden in the dark earth, her voice has refused to die. Tonight you will hear the echoes of that forbidden voice. You will walk into the shadows of secrecy and discover what countless generations were never meant to know. What you are about to hear will change your life forever. 2 fragments of papyrus, torn and incomplete, first came to light in the late 19th century, smuggled out of Egypt under the cover of night. Scholars who touched these pages recognized at once that they were not ordinary scriptures. They belonged to a hidden gospel, a gospel that dared to tell the story not from the eyes of apostles like Peter or John, but through the words of Mary Magdalene herself. Why then was such a voice silenced? The answer lies not in the weakness of her testimony, but in the strength of it. For within these words was a revelation far more dangerous than political revolts or pagan cults: the idea that divine truth could be accessed directly, without priests, without institutions, without hierarchy. If Mary's vision had been accepted, the entire structure of power in the early church would have crumbled. The fragments describe teachings that reach beyond the material world, unveiling a journey of the soul through realms of darkness, a confrontation with the powers that bind human beings to ignorance, and the liberation that comes when one remembers the divine spark within. They paint Mary not as a repentant sinner, but as the disciple who truly understood the secret words of the Master, so much so that Peter himself grew jealous, asking why the teacher would reveal mysteries to her that he had not entrusted to them. This was too much. To allow her gospel into the canon would mean admitting that the cornerstone of faith might rest not in authority, but in inner gnosis, direct knowledge of the divine. And so the text was hidden, condemned, forgotten by official decree. Yet somehow, fragments survived, waiting for an age when humanity would be ready to hear them once more. For the first time, this forbidden knowledge will now be revealed. The story begins in the tumultuous centuries after the crucifixion, when Christianity itself was not yet one religion, but a scattered constellation of sects, visions, and voices. In hidden rooms of Alexandria, in desert caves of Upper Egypt, believers copied texts onto fragile papyri, each community preserving its own memory of the teacher. Among them was a manuscript unlike any other, the Gospel of Mary. This text does not describe miracles of bread and fish, nor does it dwell on resurrection in the flesh. Instead, it opens a window into a private conversation between Jesus and Mary, where he entrusts her with knowledge reserved for the few. In those passages, the Master speaks of the soul's path beyond death, how it rises, how it confronts the powers of darkness, 7 archons that represent ignorance, desire, and fear, and how liberation is found not through sacrifice on an altar, but through awakening the inner spirit. Imagine how revolutionary such a teaching would sound in the 1st century. It proclaimed that salvation was not dependent on temple or bishop, but on the inner journey of consciousness itself. It suggested that each human carried within them a spark of the divine, and that to remember this spark was to be free. For a world bound by empire, law, and rigid hierarchy, these words were nothing short of dangerous, but the Gospel of Mary was more than philosophy. It contained the seed of practice. In its fragments, scholars glimpse references to the soul's discipline, to stillness, to vision, to the mastery of inner silence. These practices echo the ancient meditations of desert mystics, the breath rituals of the Essenes, even the contemplations found in Eastern traditions. To close one's eyes, steady the breath, and listen within was to walk the same path Mary had been shown, a path of liberation from fear and illusion. The first secret practice is therefore simple, yet profound: the art of inner remembrance. Sit in silence, close your eyes, breathe deeply, slowly, until the noise of the world fades. As each breath flows in, imagine drawing light into your chest. As each breath flows out, release the weight of fear. This was the essence of Mary's teaching, that the soul, when stilled, remembers what it truly is: eternal, unbroken, divine. For those who dared to practice this, the world itself began to appear different. Less a prison of suffering, more a veil waiting to be lifted. This was not faith imposed from without, but gnosis discovered within. And it was precisely this that threatened those who claimed authority over men's souls. Centuries passed, and the Gospel of Mary slipped into obscurity. Yet its whispers found resonance in those who dared to seek truth beyond dogma. Consider Hypatia of Alexandria, the brilliant philosopher and mathematician of the 4th century. Though she never touched Mary's gospel directly, her pursuit of hidden knowledge mirrored the same spirit. That wisdom is not granted by decree, but discovered through inquiry. For this, she too was silenced, her body torn by zealots who feared what an awakened mind could ignite. The thread runs further. In the 20th century, fragments of Mary's gospel re-emerged, sparking both academic fascination and spiritual hunger. Modern scholars marveled not only at its words, but at how they harmonized with discoveries in science. Neuroscience now shows that meditation reshapes the brain's wiring, quieting the centers of fear while awakening regions linked to compassion and insight. Epigenetics suggests that stress and trauma can imprint upon our very genes, while practices of stillness and mindfulness can reverse those marks, offering liberation at the biological level. What Mary taught in whispers, modern science confirms with data. The inner journey has measurable power. The act of calming the breath, of turning the gaze inward, is not mere mysticism. It is a technology of consciousness. From this insight emerges the second secret practice: the dialogue of the soul. In her gospel, Mary describes visions where the soul ascends through hostile powers that demand answers. Where are you going, soul? What have you seen? To pass each realm, the soul must answer truthfully, shedding illusions. In practice, this becomes a form of self-examination. Tonight you may try it. After your breathing has settled, pose a question to yourself in silence. What am I clinging to? What am I afraid of? What truth do I refuse to see? Wait and listen. Do not rush. Answers will arise, not from the surface mind, but from the depths. Write them down. Return to them daily. This ritual, practiced with patience, is a modern echo of Mary's ascent. As neuroscience confirms, reflection activates the prefrontal cortex, the seat of higher reasoning, while calming the amygdala, the center of fear. The ancient vision of the soul confronting powers of darkness becomes, in our language, the brain mastering its own shadows. Mary's secret was never against reason. It was a marriage of spirit and mind, a roadmap to freedom. And freedom, once tasted, becomes impossible to surrender. Beyond the fragments of parchment and the debates of scholars lies a vision far greater than history. The Gospel of Mary does not merely describe private teachings, it opens a door to the cosmic order itself. When Mary speaks of the soul rising through realms of shadow, she is not only recounting a mystical journey after death, but unveiling a map of consciousness, one that mirrors the very patterns of the universe. Modern science has given language to what ancient mystics intuited. The spiraling helix of DNA, carrying the code of life, mirrors the spiral galaxies above. Sacred geometry, etched into the cathedrals of Europe and the temples of Egypt alike, echoes the same truth, that the microcosm and the macrocosm are one. To study the cosmos is to study the self. To descend into the self is to encounter the cosmos. Mary's Gospel insists that within each person is a divine spark, a fragment of the eternal light that gave birth to the stars. To awaken, it is to remember that you are more than flesh, more than name, more than circumstance. You are a living manuscript of the infinite, written in both blood and starlight. The journey through darkness, then, is not punishment, but initiation, stripping away all that blinds you to your true nature. Here lies the third secret practice: alignment with the cosmic rhythm. Ancient mystics would attune their breath, prayer, or chant to the cycles of the moon, the rising of the sun, the beat of the drum echoing a heartbeat. Today, you may begin with a simple exercise. Step outside beneath the night sky. Fix your eyes on a single star. As you inhale, imagine pulling its light into your body. As you exhale, imagine your own inner light streaming back toward the heavens. Continue until the boundary between you and it begins to blur. This communion awakens a realization. You are not a small, powerless being trapped in a hostile universe. You are part of the cosmic fabric itself, woven from the same threads as galaxies, rivers, and ancient fire. The Gospel of Mary hinted at this when it taught that the soul, once freed from ignorance, rises not to a throne imposed from above, but to union with the source from which all things flow. Science, too, begins to affirm this vision. Quantum physics whispers that the observer and the observed are inseparable, that reality itself responds to awareness. In this light, Mary's teaching is not superstition, but prophecy. The cosmos is conscious, and so are you. At the heart of the Gospel of Mary lies a revelation so unsettling that it could not be permitted to endure in the open. When the teacher departed, the disciples quarreled. Peter questioned why Jesus would speak privately to a woman, why she alone received visions. Mary stood firm, declaring that she had seen the Master in luminous form, that he had spoken of truths beyond the reach of the senses. Her words carried authority, not borrowed from hierarchy, but from direct encounter. This was the veil the Church sought to keep closed. The possibility that revelation is not confined to a chosen priesthood, but accessible to every soul who dares to look within. The mystics understood. Gnostics of the early centuries, Sufi poets of the Islamic world, Kabbalists of medieval Europe, all echoed Mary's insight, that the divine spark is immediate, intimate, already present. Their writings speak of ascending through veils of illusion, of union with the One, of light hidden in the human heart. And modern science, in its own language, continues to approach the same horizon. Neuroscientists document mystical states where the brain's sense of separation dissolves, and subjects report unity with all existence. Physicists uncover patterns suggesting that reality at its deepest levels is not made of matter, but of fields, probabilities, and connections, an invisible web resonating with consciousness itself. Mary's Gospel, once condemned as heresy, begins to sound less like myth and more like anticipation. An ancient manuscript pointing toward discoveries our age is only now beginning to articulate. The fourth secret practice is one of union. In ancient rituals, mystics chanted until words dissolved into pure vibration, surrendering the small self into the vast sea of being. You may practice this by choosing a single word or sound, perhaps light, perhaps a name sacred to you. Repeat it softly with each breath, allowing the sound to blur, to merge, until what remains is silence filled with presence. In that silence, the boundary between self and source begins to fade. This was the power hidden in Mary's voice, not rebellion for its own sake, but a call to remembrance, a call that threatened empires and institutions because it placed the key of salvation into the hands of every soul. Whoever embraced it would no longer be bound by fear or controlled by decree. They would become sovereign, radiant, and free. And this, above all, was the secret that had to be buried. But let every seeker pause here, for the path of hidden knowledge is not without peril. What Mary unveiled was never meant to be wielded carelessly, like a jewel flaunted in the marketplace. It is fire, capable of giving warmth and light, yet just as capable of consuming all who grasp it without reverence. Those who read her words with pride rather than humility risk mistaking illusion for truth. The very powers she warned of, desire, ignorance, arrogance, are not defeated once and for all. They wait in ambush, ready to twist the vision of liberation into chains of self-deception. History offers countless examples of mystics who touched the eternal, yet fell into madness or tyranny when they claimed mastery without surrender. Science, too, warns us of similar dangers. Neuroplasticity can heal the brain, but it can also reinforce delusion. The same practices that quiet fear can, in the wrong hands, become tools of manipulation and control. What was meant to free the soul can enslave it anew if pursued without love, without truth. Therefore, hear this final warning. These teachings are not entertainment, nor are they weapons to bend others to your will. They are invitations to transformation, dangerous only if corrupted by ego. If you choose to walk this path, do so with courage, humility, and devotion to the light within all beings. Whoever masters this secret masters their destiny. And now you have heard the voice that was silenced for 2,000 years. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, hidden beneath dust and decree, has spoken again. Not as myth, not as rumor, but as a living current flowing into this very moment. Her words call not for blind obedience, but for awakening. They remind you that the divine spark is not distant, but burning within your own chest. This is the forbidden knowledge humanity forgot. It is the courage to listen inwardly, the strength to rise through shadows, the wisdom to recognize that you are both flesh and light. To carry this truth is to carry a responsibility, to live not as one enslaved by fear, but as one who remembers their origin in eternity. If you have listened with an open heart, then something ancient within you has stirred. You have awakened a forbidden knowledge humanity forgot. and once awakened, it cannot be silenced again. The book is closed, for now, but countless other manuscripts remain sealed, waiting to be opened. In the next revelation, we will journey into another hidden gospel, another secret wisdom long concealed by history, and uncover how it may transform your life today. Until then, keep the flame alive.